Hey everybody, it's Sunday night, so I'm going to be doing another video. Last weekend I started kind of a series of testimonies, um, just taking a step back from doing teachings or topical teachings or exegetical videos and just sharing some personal testimonies, things that have occurred in my life that really show the sovereign hand of God at work, and I hope to give him glory in these, and just show how God is at work in the lives of his people. And so last weekend, I started that series with the first video, and I'm going to continue this week, and then Lord willing, I'll do two more after this. But this one here, I'm sharing it. I titled it "Vacationing in a Hurricane," and it's some events that happened to me last year. Let me just get I think it was August of last year or September of last year. September 5th, 2017 is when I wrote this. So I would have written this guy after getting back from the vacation. But me and some brothers, we took a trip. We took a cruise to Central America, Mexico, that area down there. And there was a large hurricane. I forget what the name of it was. It was on the news. Hurricane Harvey. Hurricane Harvey was going on when we started out. So just some cool circumstances happened during that trip, and I saw the hand of the Lord in it. And so I wrote this when I got back, just to share with people what the Lord had done, and so now I want to do that video, or do this video sharing what I had wrote. Before getting into that, of course, I'm going to pray. If you can't watch this live, or if you're just jumping in for a few minutes and you can't watch the whole thing, subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can watch all my videos on there. It's King Ram 417. K, my middle initial, Ingram, my last name, 417. I'll post this on there right away, and then you can also watch all my other videos on there and watch them at your leisure. So before getting into this, I'm just going to pray, and if you guys want to pray with me. One thing I don't often do is bring up current events, but I just saw something that kind of a personal hero of mine is having some health issues. David Knight, he's a reporter for Infowars.com. Whether or not you agree with conspiracy theories or what your feelings are on Alex Jones, I believe David Knight is a sincere and gentle man. I think he's a Christian. He espouses Judeo-Christian beliefs on air. It's hard to tell. We judge a book by its fruit. That's how we tell if a person is a Christian or not, by what comes out of them. So if you don't know somebody personally, it can be hard to discern. I mean, we can certainly still listen to the things they talk about, and that reveals their heart. And just there's just spirit bears witness with spirit. A lot of times when you meet a believer, you know it. The spirit in you testifies that that person is a member of the family of Christ. And so I've always just kind of been drawn to this guy. He seems like a good brother. I think he's sincere, and so I saw that he had a massive heart attack, and he's got to have surgery tomorrow, and so I just kind of felt burdened about that, and I wanted to pray for him too. So I'm going to do that, and I'll also pray for this video, if you guys want to pray with me. Lord, I just want to pray for David Knight. I pray that you would protect him. Give the EMTs, the doctors, the staff, the technicians, the nurses, everybody involved in the surgery, Lord. I just pray that you give them wisdom to know what to do, and to make their correct decisions, swift decisions if need be, that you steady their hands as they do surgery on this man's heart. And I just pray that you comfort him and his family, that you give them peace. I think he's a brother, Lord. I think he knows you. So if he doesn't know you, I pray that you draw him unto yourself, that you use this to bring him and his family to you, Lord, that you glorify yourself through this man, that if he is a believer, that you just give him comfort and let him and his family be a light to show how to endure trials and tribulations, and that they're a witness to everybody involved, the staff, the nurses, the technicians, his radio listeners, that everybody just sees the grace and how Christians can endure hardships with joy because of you, Lord. I just pray that you protect that man. I have a love in my heart for him, and I love the work he does, and I appreciate it, Lord, and I appreciate you raising up people like that. And so I want to pray for this video, Lord. I pray that you take my eyes off of myself. I see how vain I am, Lord, and how I can make this about me. And as I was praying before coming to do this video, just thinking about why I'm doing these testimonies and how it can end up being about me, how I can say, look what the Lord has done in my life, and put the focus on me, Lord, and instead of the focus on you. And I just want to glorify you in these videos, Lord. I pray that you show me how to do that, Lord, to take my eyes off of self, that you rid me of all the selfishness and the vanity and the ego that's in my heart, Lord, and the vanity and how just in my heart I just puff myself up, and I want eyes on me, and I want the attention, Lord. And it's grievous, Lord. I don't want to be like that, and I just pray that you help me to show me how to not be like that, Lord, and teach me how to do these videos to your glory, to get myself out of the way, Lord, and just the foolishness of being prideful and vain, Lord, and how empty it is, and how it can distract from what's important, and that's you and your glory, Lord. And so I pray that you please humble my heart, Lord. Make me lowly, make me weak, Lord, and make me nothing, Lord. Make me disappear on these videos, and just let it all be about your glory, Lord, to show you, and help me to do that, Lord. I pray that you guide my words, guide my conversation. Let me glorify and magnify you in these videos, and show people how mighty and how magnificent and how beautiful you are, Lord. Help me to be sincere and genuine, and just wanting to show your glory to others, Lord. Protect me from error, and if there's anything beneficial, Lord, if there's any glory in this, I pray that you open ears and you let it shine forth to people, and you keep me humble, Lord. I love you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Alright, so again, I titled this Vacationing in a Hurricane. And I want to start by reading Judges chapter 7, verses 2 through 7. And those verses read, "And the Lord said unto Gideon, the people that are with thee are too many." Well, let me give you the context here. Gideon was going to go fight a war, and he had raised up a huge army. And so in this section of scriptures here, the Lord is saying, I'm going to whittle this army down to almost nothing. Because if you win the battle in strength, if you win the battle with all this might, there's the possibility that you get the glory for it, that your army gets the glory for it. It wouldn't seem like a big deal if you had 135,000 people and you beat an army of a similar size. So the Lord whittles it down to almost nothing, so that he'll get the glory in it, so that it's in impossible circumstances. And that way when victory comes, everybody knows that it's a supernatural act of God, that it couldn't have been Gideon and his army. It had to have been the hand of the Lord. So it says here in Judges chapter 7, verses 2 through 7, "And the Lord said unto Gideon, The people that are with thee are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands, lest Israel vaunt themselves against me, saying, My own hand hath saved me. Now therefore go to, proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, Whosoever is fearful and afraid, let him return and depart early from Mount Gilead. And there returned to the people 22,000, and there remained 10,000. And the Lord said unto Gideon, The people are yet too many. Bring them down unto the water, and I will try them for thee there. And it shall be that of whom I say unto thee, This shall go with thee, the same shall go with thee. And of whomsoever I say unto thee, This shall not go with thee, the same shall not go. So he brought down the people unto the water, and the Lord said unto Gideon, Every one that lappeth of the water with his tongue, as a dog lappeth, him shalt thou set by himself. Likewise, every one that boweth down upon his knees to drink. Just lost internet connection there. This happens every time I do these videos. I lose connection. Not exactly sure where it left off, but I'll reread verse 5. So he brought down the people unto the water, and the Lord said unto Gideon, Every one that lappeth of the water with his tongue, as a dog lappeth, him shalt thou set by himself. Likewise, every one that boweth down upon his knees to drink. And the number of them that lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, were 300 men. But all the rest of the people bowed down upon their knees to drink water. And the Lord said unto Gideon, By the 300 men that lapped will I save you, and deliver the Midianites into thine hand. And let all the other people go every man unto his place. So when Gideon was raised up by the Lord to go fight the invading Midianites, he gathered this huge army. Based on those numbers there, when it first started, it would have been about 32,000 people. After all, he was going to fight an opposing army of about 135,000 people. That's recorded in Judges chapter 8, verse 10. But the Lord had other plans. He stated that if Israel were to win this war, they would be pridefully lifted up, thinking that they had won in their own strength. They had used their numbers to defeat an army of equal or lesser value. So God whittled down the Israel army to a group of only about 300 men. Now think about that, 300 versus 135,000, a ratio of 1 to 1,350. One man for every 1,350 that the opposing army had. That's an impossible feat. You know, how could they win with 300 people against an army that big? So the question is, why would God do this? The answer is so that when victory came, no one would be able to boast in themselves or the might of their army. The only way victory would be possible would be through supernatural means. Psalm 20 verse 7 says, Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we will remember the name of the Lord our God. And then Jeremiah 17 verse 5 says, Thus saith the Lord, Cursed be the man that trusteth in man, and maketh flesh his arm, and whose heart departeth from the Lord. So the way that God is working with Gideon and the Midianites here, I think that's how God often works. He sets up impossible circumstances before us so that when the impossible happens, he is clearly the cause, and we can give him all the glory for it. We can take none of that glory for ourselves. We can credit nothing to the flesh. And a very similar thing happened when I went on this vacation last year. And it's good, it's cool, the sovereign hand of the Lord, how he's working on these videos that I do. I had predetermined the order in which I was going to do these videos, prayerfully considering each one. And I wrote up a list, and there's been a few times where it coincidentally turns out that the topic that comes up is something that's occurring in my life or something that needs to be talked about at that time. And I'm doing these series of testimonies here where I'm kind of at a point like that in my life. I think I might be at the beginning of it. I don't know. I'm still unsure, but there's some circumstances in my life right now that I think the Lord is bringing me into it. I think it's a new path that the Lord's going to have me walk down, a new set of circumstances, a new change in life. But if it's going to be, there seems to be impossible circumstances blocking it. There seems to be things in the way that by human understanding or by fleshly effort, they seem almost impossible to conquer. It's like I look at the circumstances and I go, there's just how could it be? There's it doesn't make sense. But I feel a compelling and a propelling of the Lord into this direction. And so I'm kind of sitting back with excitement, looking at it going, if this happens, if this is the way the Lord wants me to go in, then he's going to have to do some miraculous things. He's going to have to do some amazing supernatural things. And it's got me excited, because if this is the path the Lord wants me to move into, it's going to be amazing. It's something that I want and desire with all my heart, and if it happens, it's going to be pretty miraculous. And so I'm doing these testimonies where I'm re-examining times where the Lord has worked similarly in my life, times where the Lord has worked miraculously, whether they be small events or big events. Like what I'm going to talk about here, most people would brush this off as coincidental and no big deal, might even say, oh, you're looking into it too deeply. But those who are born again know that there are no coincidences or circumstances that come about by chance. The Lord our God is sovereign over everything, and he's working in our favor if we're called and chosen. Every single detail of our life is propelling us towards holiness and righteousness, and is for our good and is for his glory. And so every single thing that occurs is designed for that purpose. And so there are no coincidences. Everything that happens is for our good. And when the Lord opens our eyes to it and lets us see it, there's great joy in that, and he did open my eyes to it here on this trip. So we had left the Minneapolis airport on August 26th last year, and we were going to be flying to Houston. And when we left, we knew that Hurricane Harvey was fast approaching and was already starting to make landfall in Houston, where we were flying into. But our flights were showing on schedule, so we left anyways. As we approached Houston for landing, we went through much turbulence. Now, I had never flown before. This was my first flight, so I didn't realize that this was uncommon. I just thought that's how flying works. I really didn't think anything of it. I wasn't fearful or nervous or anything. I just thought it was commonplace. But when we got off the plane, we happened to run into the co-pilot and one of the stewardesses on an escalator. And they explained to us that it was the worst turbulence they had ever experienced. I think the pilot said he had been flying for 26 years, and this was the worst turbulence that he had ever experienced. So our victory of getting to New Orleans on time for our cruise, we had this layover in Houston. The victory of getting to this vacation cruise in New Orleans was being whittled down. So we left in the strong arm of the flesh, with all the plans prepared, all the details worked out, everything scheduled. We had our army of 35,000, and now just getting to Houston was troublesome. So now that army's been whittled down. We lost our 22,000. Now we're just down to the 10,000. Using this analogy, this scenario with Gideon. So we quickly discovered that our connecting flight to New Orleans was canceled. Now, I had been praying before this trip that I would be filled with a heart of worship for the entire trip. We've gone on trips before, and every time I go with the brothers on a trip, our goal is not necessarily to go and have fun and do things. It's to meet the Lord. We want to meet the Lord out in nature in these new places we've never been, and we want to celebrate the Lord together, and we want to be in worship and praise, And so going into this trip, that had been my heart. I'd been praying, Lord, just please let me be worshipful and full of praise this entire time. So when we found out that the New Orleans flight was canceled, I didn't panic. My heart was rejoicing because the Lord had started to work in me already, and I could see His sovereign hand. I could already see this analogy of Gideon at work. I was aware of it. I could see His sovereign hand at work, setting up these difficulties, setting up these impossible circumstances so that He would be glorified when the victory came. I knew that this was the case. I knew that we're getting to New Orleans on time. We're going on this trip. I had this confidence, this hope, and so it was creating this joy in me as I'm seeing these obstacles put in the way, and I'm anticipating the Lord knocking them down, kind of like I am right now with these new circumstances. There's fear because I don't want to get so hopeful and so overjoyed that then if it's not the Lord's will, I'm crushed, because I've had that happen too, where I misinterpreted what I thought the Lord wanted for me, and I moved ahead in my own power, and it ended up not being. Just so I can clear that up for you, so there's no obscurity with what I'm saying. Several years ago, my son, who I didn't have custody of, he was living with his mom. His mom had decided to join the military, and she was going to be deployed to Afghanistan, I believe, Afghanistan or Iraq, one of the two, I can't remember. But she was going to be gone for a year, or maybe even more. I knew it was at least a year. And so in my head, I was thinking, well, okay, then I'll get custody of my son when she's gone. Like it to me, it was like it was a shut and closed case. That's the right thing to do. He shouldn't be staying with his stepdad while his mom's gone. He should be with me. And so I went to court and I filled out the paperwork to get temporary custody. And of course, I was praying, and I thought the Lord was authorizing me to do this. I thought I was discerning His will in it. I thought, of course, this is the righteous thing to do. A dad is supposed to be with his son. So this is the good, and this is the righteous thing to do. This is the right path to go down. And so I felt like I was doing the right thing. And so I moved ahead with this. I went to court. I got the paperwork filled. I got my heart all excited that I was going to have my son for the next year with me. And then his mom, who has never forgiven me for our past, and I don't blame her at all. She never knew the saved Josh. She only knew lost Joshua. And so she had to deal with the worst of who I was, and so she never forgave me for that, and so she had this bitterness and this hatred in her heart for me. I think, she really just didn't talk to me, so, but she didn't want me to have Austin, and so she got military lawyers and went to court and stopped the process, and in ways I don't completely understand. The case was dropped, and the judge said that because she was deployed and wouldn't be able to appear in court to defend herself, that the case would not be heard. And so I didn't even get to go to court. I didn't even get to appear in front of the judge. And so I was really, really heartbroken about that. I was crushed because I'd set my heart on it. I had anticipated and built up this hope in having my son with me, and I wanted him with me so bad. And then it didn't come to pass, and I was devastated by that. And so when I'm setting my heart on these new things, I'm kind of cautious, because that's in the back of my mind. I'm thinking, what if this isn't the path that the Lord has for me? So that's just my caution, but that's neither here nor there. Let me get back to this testimony. Kind of lost my train of thought there. I don't know how I was tying this hurricane into this situation with Austin. But anyways, let me just jump back into this. So I knew that the Lord was working in our favor. I knew that these obstacles were being set up for our benefit, so that God would get ultimate glory when through these impossible circumstances we still got to go on this vacation. And I was in a heart of worship. I was in, I had tremendous faith that this was going to work, and I was in this heart of worship. And I guess that's how I was tying in the Austin thing. So there's a different, I guess it's hard to discern, it's like when you really want something, to discern the will of the Lord, it can cloud your vision. In this here, though, I had it settled in my heart that this was the will of the Lord, that we were going to go on this vacation and this was going to work. And so I actually found myself rejoicing in these difficult circumstances, which was probably really irritating to the brothers that were traveling with me, because they were kind of in anxiousness and fear and worry. And I just kept smiling and saying, trust the Lord. It's going to work out. We're going to be fine. We're going to get there on time. And they're like, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? Don't worry about it, brothers. It's all going to work out. So anyways, the airline quickly rescheduled our flight for 2 p.m. And so we found a place to sit and wait, and I kind of drifted off to sleep. A few minutes later, my brother woke me up in a panic, saying, hey, the 2 o'clock flight is canceled as well. What are we going to do? So we had to be to our cruise by noon the next day, or it would leave without us. We would miss it. And at that point in time, I was under the impression that there were no refunds. When I booked the cruise, the fine print said there wouldn't be any refunds. I later found out that I think because of natural disasters or weather-related things, that they can work with you. But I didn't know that at the time. We didn't know that at the time. So we're working under the assumption that if we don't get to the port by noon the next day, we're missing our cruise and we're losing out on our money because there's no refunds. But I kept rejoicing in my heart and worshiping the sovereign hand of the Lord. But my brothers were getting really anxious. So this canceled 2 o'clock flight, it's like another whittling down of the soldiers. We went from our 35,000 to 10,000. Now we're down to 5,000. So we went to wait in the customer service line, and we found out that it was huge. Every flight was being canceled. Everything coming into Houston, going out of Houston was being canceled. And this line was extremely long. It was going to take us hours just to get up to the service desk. So we eventually got called up to the front desk while a new panic had set in on my brothers, as they're wondering where our bags were. Where did the bags from our Minneapolis flight go? But when we got up to the front counter, we were told that there's nothing leaving today. Everything was shut down. All the flights were closed down. The hurricane had made landfall. Nothing's leaving. They said they could possibly get us a flight to New Jersey and connect the following morning to New Orleans, which would put us in New Orleans at 9 a.m. That left us no room for error, like zero room for error. If anything delayed that flight, we would miss our cruise. And so we logically concluded that this is an unreasonable assumption. This hurricane had just arrived. It wasn't going anywhere. Tomorrow morning's flight was just as likely to be canceled, and we would be stuck in Houston, and our ship would be sailing away without us. So we knew we had to get to New Orleans immediately. We couldn't stay in Houston. If we waited for a flight the next morning, it wasn't going to happen. So we started thinking about renting a car. I had been on the phone with my dad, and he had told us that the car rental places probably weren't renting because of potential flood hazards. It's like an insurance thing. They won't rent cars when there's a natural disaster like that going on outside. And as we left the line, some guy had overheard us talking, and he told us that he had tried to rent a car, and he was denied because of the flooding. They had told him that nothing was leaving Houston due to the dangerous conditions. So again, our army's being whittled down. We went from the 35 to the 10 to the 5. Now we're down to 3,000. But nonetheless, I stayed in joy and worship in my heart. Like I was in such faith, I was in such confidence that this was going to work out, that none of these circumstances were fazing me. I knew that this was the hand of the Lord, and that He had designed this, and that we were going to get there on time, and that this was for His good, or for our good and His glory. So we got through to Avis Car Rental. and they said that they could give us a car. So now we just had to find our bags. We had overheard on the loudspeaker while we were waiting in customer service line that all the New Orleans luggage was available at the pickup. So we went down to the baggage claim, and 3 of us quickly found our bags, but one of the brothers' bags were missing, or his bag was missing. He had one large suitcase. So again, the army's now whittled down to 1,000. I stayed rejoicing in my heart, though. I was worshiping again, seeing the Lord whittle down, obstacle after obstacle, putting it in front of us. He was whittling down the strong arm of the flesh. There's circumstantially speaking, there's no way we should be getting to New Orleans on time now. But this joy in me, I could discern that my optimism was starting to annoy my brothers. And I'm sure you guys know that from experience. If somebody's overjoyed and you're kind of irritated and anxious, it can add to the annoyance to have somebody full of joy in your ear. So the Lord cautioned me to keep my joy to myself, so I started being more reserved in that. My brother went to the lost baggage claim and started to wait. Meanwhile, time was passing, and we had a 3 o'clock appointment with the car rental place. If we weren't there on time, the car rental agent had said that he couldn't guarantee we'd get a car. But I knew the Lord would work this out. We're now whittled down to 1,000. We're waiting on this bag. We have to get to the car rental place, or we're not getting a car. So we agreed that 2 of us would go to get the car while the other 2 waited for the bag. While at the car rental place, we got a call from our brothers that the bag had been found and that they were on their way. So we got our car, but there were concerns of flooding. My dad, again, I'm in communication with him by the phone, and he's watching the news on the hurricane, and he says we need to watch out for washed out roads, that there's major flooding. And so another one of my brothers pulled up on his phone the GPS, and the map showed all the roads closed. Like basically everything going out of Houston was shut down because of flooding. So now we're down to our 500. But again, I knew that the Lord would get us there. I was just confident in this, that none of these obstacles were fazing me. All the obstacles, all this whittling down of the strong arm of the flesh. And so now we're symbolically left with our meek 300 to take on an army of 135,000. But we drove through the evening. All the roads were clear, although we did hit some heavy rain outside of New Orleans. And we arrived in New Orleans around 10 p.m. And another cool thing here is later on, my dad was telling me he was watching the news, and the exact road that we took to get out of Houston was on the news with catastrophic flooding. It was just like the roads were just completely washed out. So we had just barely made it. Like we got past that section right before the floods hit. But we made our cruise, and we ended up enjoying perfect weather, calm seas for the entire trip. The Lord had sovereignly directed us around this entire storm, and we never experienced any real hardships other than, a lack of faith. So, and the Lord had answered my prayer, and I stayed in a heart of worship for this entire trip. There were difficulties and lessons learned on the trip. The Lord always meets us out there. I've taken several trips with these brothers, and the Lord always ministers to us. We always learn something. So there were difficulties and lessons learned with my own sin out on this trip. There, a love of money, selfishness, patiently forbearing with my brothers, etc. But the Lord blessed us immensely, and we had a great trip. We were able to meet nice people. We were able to witness to people in other countries. We were able to hand out gospel tracts to a few. Just thinking back about some of the, we went on excursions where, we'd land at a port and we'd go check out some sites or something. And our tour guides were the ones that we were really able to witness to. And I had some pretty cool encounters with them. I remember one guy getting tears in his eyes as we told him about Jesus and gave him a tract. And so we also got to see amazing things. I'd never left America before, so I got to see some cool things, some stunning views. I'd never been on the ocean before. We got to enjoy God's creation. It was the glorious cruise that He had orchestrated, and He won the victory for us. So I just wanted to share that. We came into this trip, and with our strong army of the flesh, everything detailed, everything worked out, everything planned, and then obstacle after obstacle after obstacle kept coming in the way, and it seemed like it was going to be impossible. But I just stayed in a heart of worship and trusted the Lord. And so I'm doing that now again with my circumstances, trusting the Lord, trying not to get my hopes up too much in case it's not the will of the Lord. I guess that's what I was getting at with the Austin thing. Like I've set my heart on something, and I want it so bad that, if it ends up not being the will of the Lord, it would just crush me. And so I'm trying to be cautious. I feel like the Lord's compelling me in this direction. I feel like the Lord's leading me in this direction, and it's super, super exciting. If this is the hand of the Lord, and I'll just, for the people who know me personally, it's if this is the direction the Lord has taken me, it's going to be the greatest thing that's ever occurred in my life. It's going to be amazing, and so I'm really excited about it, but at the same time I'm trying to be cautious because of these impossible circumstances, because of the things that seem like it can't happen. Like, it's these hurricanes that are in the way, so to speak, and I know if it is the will of the Lord, He's gonna knock those hurricanes down, and He's gonna move me in this direction no matter what. But at the same time, I'm trying to be cautious and guarded. So that's that. I apologize for speaking in an obscure kind of way, but I don't really want to open up too much about it right now. But this was a cool testimony. It ended up being a great vacation, and just wanted to share with you guys what had happened, and hopefully you can see the glory of the Lord in this, and hopefully it can encourage you that no matter what circumstances you're going through, the Lord can work in your favor. He can knock down those obstacles. If He has designed something for your life, if you're His child and He's moving you in a certain direction, there's nothing that can stand in the way of that. There's no obstacles, nothing too big, no army too large. The Lord can conquer an army of 135,000 with 300. He can do it with one. There's another time where the Lord slayed an army of 185,000, I think it was, with one angel. And Jesus, when He was being, crucified, and they said, He told them, "Don't you know that I can call legions of angels right now?" It's the Lord can do all things, and so if He's moving in your life in a certain direction, if He has something planned for you, there's nothing that can stop it, and it's going to be for your good and His glory. And so that's the testimony I got on this. Hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, if you didn't get a chance to watch it live, subscribe to my YouTube channel, King Ram 417. It's K, my middle initial, Ingram, my last name, 417. I'll get this posted on there right away. And thanks for watching. I love you guys. Happy New Year, and see you next time.